Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending our third and final info session in this three-part series. We do have our questions and answer section open. So any questions that you have for us as a presentation is moving forward, please feel free to submit those questions. Let us know who you are. What's your preferred name? Where are you tuning in from? City, possibly state, if you'd like to give that information. And let us know if you know the type of physician you'd like to be. Go ahead and put that in the chat. Well, hello there, Megan. Thank you so much for joining us from Monterey, California. And I am also looking forward to your future towards becoming a sports medicine physician. Welcome. Hi there, Brenda from San Fernando Valley. Here again. Welcome again. Very nice to have you. And you are hoping to become a psychiatrist. Very good. Hi there, Gabby. You would like to be a dermatologist. Oh, good choice. All of these are great choices, but I've heard that dermatology has pretty flexible hours. Hi there, Michael. Tuning in from Salinas. And you'd like to be an anesthesiologist. Very nice. Hi, Francine. I recognize your name from last time. Welcome again. And you're looking forward to becoming a surgeon. I am also looking forward for that. Hi, Andres from San Jose. You're hoping to become an emergency medicine physician. Nice. We are so happy that all of you are joining us. Hi there, Celeste. You're interested in becoming a dermatologist. So we have two future dermatologists in the audience. Welcome to you all. Hi, Jane, coming in from Chico, and you are navigating career options to be a pediatrician or an OBGYN. These are all really exciting career choices that you have, and I'm so excited for you to get started on your medical school journey, and so happy that you're connected with us so that we can provide some assistance along that journey. So we'll go ahead and get started. I want to be mindful of everyone's time here. As I said, please feel free as you're coming in, feel free to let us know who you are in the chat, and we'll make sure to give you a shout out and put that positive energy out there in the universe towards your medical journey. All right, so as I mentioned, welcome everyone. This is our third and final info session in the three-part series. Today, we are going to be discussing funding your medical school journey. And I'm going to have everyone on the screen that you see displayed here introduce ourselves, starting with me. My name is Dr. Mayan Udowatuk. I am the Director of Program and Partnership Development at the Silicon Valley Extension for the University of California, Santa Cruz. I am not a physician, a different type of doctor altogether. But I'm so happy to be working on our program, specifically our post-bac program.
Hi, everybody. I'm Grant Hartzog. I'm a professor in the MCD Biology Department at UC Santa Cruz. I'm the director of the Global and Community Health Program here. Despite what my mother thinks, I'm not a real doctor, but before I got my PhD, I did go to medical school, so I do have a good understanding of medical education. And I teach many, many students here at Santa Cruz who are interested in going on to medical school.
Thank you, man. Thanks, Grant. Hello, everybody. PK Agarwal. I'm the Dean for UCSC Extension Program here in our Silicon Valley campus, which I'll introduce shortly. So back to you, man.
And I just want to put a disclaimer out there. The information that we're going to present to you is publicly available information. No one here, in terms of the speakers, the panelists, we are not financial aid experts. We are not medical school admission experts. And so if you have super specific questions about what type of financial aid you can get in terms of the dollar amounts, those questions are best directed to a financial aid officer. I just want to put that information out there. We really don't want to provide any information that will lead you astray or provide any information that we're not qualified to give. All right. So with that, I will throw it back to our Dean, PK.
Thank you, man. Well, welcome, everybody. So just to kind of give you a sense of a geographical perspective, the picture you see is our UCSC Silicon Valley campus. Oftentimes people get confused, when they think of UC Santa Cruz, they think, UC Santa Cruz does have a good sized Silicon Valley campus where we focus mostly on professional education and some master's programs. Although when it comes to this particular program, the pre-health, pre-med, we are going to be supporting in both locations in greater Santa Cruz area as well as Silicon Valley. So that's our intent. And those of you who are in the Bay Area, I know some of you are, We are located at 101 and Great America. That's probably a landmark everybody knows. And interestingly, if there's a kind of a ground zero of Silicon Valley, that's where we are. You know, historically, a lot of the companies that evolved out of Silicon Valley evolved in this general area. And probably within 10-mile radius of us, you know, all of the big names that you hear about, Apple, you know, Intel, Google, you know, you name it. I mean, they're all within 10-mile radius of where we are. Despite of all that sort of a buzz, we have the real luxury of having a very large amount of parking, which itself is a luxury at times in Silicon Valley. So when you do come visit us, you know, that's one problem out of the way. You know, it's free, and parking is free too. So one thing to point out is that we think in terms of community. Certainly, we are there to provide you good advice. We are there to provide you education, but we principally think in terms of community. And what I mean by that is that we support you. We support each other. We are vested in your success. We kind of want to be part of your team to help you achieve your objectives. And by the way, let me say this, that oftentimes what I call this hard learning, you know, you take a course and you learn some hard facts. But there's also a soft learning, and the community element, the learning from each other is a very important part of soft learning. So there's a practical reason for us supporting the idea of community and networks. So anyway, so that's what we're here for. Come visit us. If you happen to be in the area, come visit us, come talk to us. Like I said, we are here to support you, so welcome. And with that, I'll turn it over to our moderator, Mayan.
Thank you. All right. So, as you know, you all are about to embark upon what can be considered a costly journey financially. And there are a couple of things we wanted to make you aware of in terms of what those costs could be for you. And what we tried to do is organize this in terms of what you could expect sequentially. So first things first, of course, when you are looking to attend medical school, you first have to have the proper academic training. And there are a couple of ways that you can pick up that academic training. The most common way is, of course, to get your academic training, so specifically calling out your courses that are prerequisites for medical school and the medical school application. You can generally pick this up through earning your undergraduate degree. But you can also pick up this training if you did not have a chance to do this in undergrad, perhaps because you were a computer science major or some type of other non-pre-med major. Post-bac programs do exist. And again, post-bac being short for post-baccalaureate program. And we are, in fact, presenting our inaugural post-bac program this fall. But what you want to keep in mind is, of course, the cost of your undergraduate degree and possibly the cost of a post-bac program should you need support in that manner once you graduate. So doing a little digging around, nationally, there is a very wide financial range, cost range, when it comes to how much post-bac programs cost. And I have the range listed here on the screen. Our program is in its infancy. And so we estimated that our program cost will be around $7,000. That is actually not including any science courses that you might take. So that's going to increase the cost there. Grant, anything to add before I move on?
No, I think that's it. You know, the cost of our program will depend on your particular situation, but the base program is around $7,000. And then depending on what science courses you may still need to take, then that could raise the cost by just, you know, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, something in that range.
And I should probably note here, as a reminder for people who this might be your first time joining us, our program is built to provide flexibility. So you will not be forced to take the entire program. You do have the option to take courses a la carte. So we want you to take courses that meet your specific academic needs. So the next part of this journey is considering the cost of the MCAT. So this is kind of a two-part factor here. You have the cost of the MCAT itself, which it states at the bottom, the cost of the exam, the MCAT exam, is $320. Prior to taking the MCAT exam, many of you might be interested in MCAT prep. So this is an opportunity for you to get exposed to the types of questions that are going to be presented on the actual MCAT exam, so that you can practice as many times as you can afford financially to do, and hopefully get a really competitive score in your MCAT that you can submit alongside your medical school application. We've actually partnered with Kaplan to provide us with a discount for students who sign up through us for their MCAT prep course. So I do want to put that out there, that is an available resource for you. So if you were to go to the Kaplan website right now and sign up, you'd be paying more money with them directly. But like I said, we've partnered with them to provide our students a discount when you sign up for their MCAT prep course through us. Next, we have the medical school application. And so a couple of things to note here, a couple of very important things to note. The American Medical College Application Service is a centralized medical school application clearinghouse, and they're the ones who set the fees. Keep in mind, these fees can raise and have raised a little bit over time. So perhaps 5 years from now, we're going to be looking at an increased fee. We can thank inflation for that. When we did some digging around, we found that the 2024 primary application fee is $175 for sending materials to one school. And then for your secondary applications, the application clearinghouse is going to charge you $45 for each additional school. And Grant, I'm wondering, can you provide an explanation to our audience here? What's the difference between a primary application and secondary applications?
Yeah, so just to clarify there, Mayan, so that 175 is to send your first application out to one school. If you are going to apply to a second school or a third school or a fourth school, each one of those is an additional $45. The medical school application process goes in 2 steps. So every medical school in the US, except I believe the Texas state medical schools, use the AMCAS service. So in general, if you're applying to, say, 10 or 15 medical schools in the US, all those schools are going to see the same primary application from AMCAS. So you're paying $175 for that first school and then $45 for every school thereafter. When the schools read your application, if they like it, they will invite you to submit a secondary application. And those secondary applications are specific to each school. So each school is going to ask you for different things. Every school charges a different amount for their secondary applications, but you can bet that the average will be around $100 per secondary application. One thing to keep in mind about medical school admissions is that nationally, every year, 1 out of every 2.5 or 3 people who apply to medical school will get in somewhere, right? But everybody's applying to a lot of medical schools. So at any one medical school, you may see 20 or 30 applications for every spot at that school. So that puts pressure on you to apply to multiple schools just to play that numbers game. And as a result, it drives up your application costs. So that's one thing to keep in mind.
Thank you for that clarification. Those are very important things to note. And then the last part here is your consideration towards the medical school interview. So this is best case scenario. You've submitted your applications, you've been invited for a secondary or to apply to the secondary application as Grant specified. And now you're looking at the invitation to interview at a school. And Grant, please provide some clarification here. Should students look into the specific school once they've been invited and get clarification on whether or not this would be an in-person interview, possibly interview through Zoom, since we're in a post-COVID world, so to speak? What are some other clarifications here that could be helpful?
Yeah, my understanding is the landscape is changing some as a result of COVID. So, of course, during COVID, most medical schools went to Zoom interviews. I just spoke to a medical school friend last week who's on the faculty at the University of Washington, and she told me but some schools are sticking with the Zoom interviews. I think most are still doing in-person interviews. There's a few different kinds of medical school interviews. We'll talk about those in the post-bac programs. If you have to travel to a medical school interview, I traveled to mine, you can figure on spending $500 to $1,000 for every interview that you travel to. So that's a significant additional cost in applying to medical school.
And a couple of questions for you, Grant, before we leave the slide. The first question being, how will the city's cost of living affect their overall cost of participation in a post-bac program or even in medical school? So these are things such as a high or a low cost of living, transportation versus walkability, things of that nature.
Oh, absolutely, right. I mean, all of you should know that from college, that some places are more expensive to live in and other places are cheaper. I guess you know, the one good thing is about medical school is that you're going to be busy. And so, you know, you don't need to live in a palace because you're not going to get to spend a lot of time there. You're going to be at the library and in the anatomy lab and on the wards a lot. But certainly if you go to medical school at Harvard Medical School or at UC San Francisco, those, you know, Boston and San Francisco are expensive places to live, and you're going to have to budget for that. If you go to the University of Iowa or the University of Kansas or the University of Utah, those schools are all located in cheaper, lower cost locations. So that's one thing to keep in mind.
And one more question for you. So if we're thinking about the different cities that have medical schools, and we're thinking about city attributes such as weather, campus environment, and overall pace, how might this affect finances for future medical school students? So I'm actually calling in today from Houston, Texas. We're on the Gulf Coast. We experience a lot of hurricanes. And I do spend money on my go bag, so to speak. So flashlights, extra things, just in case at a moment's notice I have to go. If someone goes to the University of Iowa, perhaps they experience really strenuous weather patterns with snow, have to spend a lot of money on winter coats. How might that affect the cost?
You know, for all of those things, I think the thing to keep in mind, yeah, you know, winter clothing, professional clothing wherever you go. Just if you even apply to medical school, you're going to have to go out and get yourself a nice suit. For example, you're going to have to probably dress better on the wards than you did while you were in college, at least if you're like me. So those expenses will be there. One thing people don't think about is travel. So if you grew up in Salinas and you go to, you know, medical school in Florida, plane flights are a lot of money, and you're probably going to want to see your family when you have the chance to. So that's one thing to keep in mind too. The other thing to keep in mind, of course, is to balance the cost of living in the city with the cost of tuition, right? If you can get into a UC medical school and you're a California resident, your tuition's going to be a lot less, and that may balance out the higher cost of living in California. You know, for most of the country, you're going to have your own particular weather challenges, whether it's, you know, fires in California, earthquakes in California, or tornadoes in Oklahoma, where I grew up, or hurricanes in Florida that are happening right now. Pick your poison, I think. One thing to keep in mind in medical school is, right, you know, that's your real life that you're living then, and you should go somewhere where you can be happy, and don't go to someplace where you're going to be absolutely miserable. So that's important too. You know, you're in this for the long haul.
That is excellent advice. Okay, so we took a look at the average medical school costs. According to the Association of American Medical Colleges, the average cost of medical schools, this is pointing out specifically the 2020 and 2021 academic year, is listed below. And as you can see, it's listed based upon in-state public medical schools versus out-of-state public medical schools. Then we have in-state private medical schools versus out-of-state private medical schools. So this is not a small amount of money for most people. And you also want to keep in mind that the average medical school cost for the 2022-2023 academic year has jumped. And that's for public schools.
So, let me ask a question to our panelists here is that in terms of, I know there's often people do borrow money to finance their medical school education. Grant, what are the typical sources of mine? Can you reflect upon that?
So there's state loan commercial loan programs is one place to go. Another place to go, depending on people's particular circumstances, are scholarship programs. Sometimes there are organizations that will pay for you to go to medical school in exchange for your future service. The most obvious of those, of course, is the military, which will not only pay for you to go to medical school, that will pay you a small salary and cover all the cost of your books and so on while you're in medical school. In exchange for, I think now they want you to serve 6 years after you finish your residency. I know a number of people who did that. There are other programs, and I think you've got a slide on this, Mayan, paying for medical school. Here we go. So there are loan repayment programs. So the National Health Service Corps scholarship is available to medical professionals who are willing to serve in areas that are medically underserved. There are parts of the Central Coast that are medically underserved. Dr. Alaman, who normally joins us but couldn't be here today, paid for his medical training through one of these scholarships. He served in Fresno, California, and he found that was a professionally enriching experience while he was there, and he made an entire career out of providing healthcare to farm workers in the Central Valley as a result of that experience. For the military programs, you can apply to the military's medical school. That's what my brother-in-law did. He's an anesthesiologist. The military will pay for you to go to any accredited medical school in the United States that you get into, and you can join those programs, virtually at any time. So it doesn't have to be ahead of time. I once had a student who was interested and then was worried. This was during the Iraq War, and she said, I'm really worried that they're going to put me into combat or something. And I went and spoke to a military recruiter and asked him about that. And he started laughing at me. And he said, doctors cost us so much money, we're not going to put them anywhere near where bullets are flying. So you're going to be safe. So there's a number of options out there, but it's definitely true, I think, now that the typical medical student in the United States graduates with several $100,000 in debt. And that sounds scary. It should sound scary to you. It sounds scary to me. But the other thing to keep in mind is that physicians and even the most poorly paid specialties these days, if they're working full time, are probably making well north of $250,000 a year, right? There's a huge shortage of physicians in this country. So if you train in medicine, you've got a job for life. And the result is you're going to be able to pay off those loans. And I recognize that may seem like weak sauce right now. That still seems scary. I always tell people that the scariest day of my life wasn't when I got married. It was when I signed my mortgage papers for my house and thought, how am I ever going to pay this off? But you'll be able to do it. That's the answer. There's a lot of opportunities out there to help finance your education. It's worth digging, but you'll be able to do it.
Grant, if I may ask this question, and you don't have to answer this, but more personal, what channel did you use to finance your education, and what was the journey like?
So my story is a weird one. I started out as a medical student at UCSF, and so with my family's help, I paid for my first year of medical school. And let me say, It was way, way cheaper back then, both the tuition itself, but also the cost of living in San Francisco at the time. So it was much easier to do. At the end of my first year, I was accepted into the MD PhD program, which is a scholarship supported program. So the rest of my training in medical school and also my PhD program were covered on a scholarship. Stipulation of that scholarship is that I had to work in academia or healthcare for a number of years equal to the amount of time that they had supported me. So I repaid what were essentially loans then by just continuing on to work as an academic scientist.
Fascinating. Thank you.
And I should say, for any of you who are interested in the idea of doing medical research, the government is desperate to have people trained in medicine, involved in research. And there are many, many paid opportunities for medical students, medical residents, and medical doctors who want to be involved in the research enterprise in this country.
Thank you so much. I'm going to back up a slide, and I just wanted to be sure to present everyone with a few comparisons. So I put the resources at the bottom in terms of where this information was found. So when it comes to the most affordable medical schools in the US, specifically calling out the year 2023, we have some information from Student Loan Planner, and that is in comparison to the most expensive schools for the year 2023, and that's from US News. And so I just want you to take a look at the tuition that's listed here. And apologies, I don't have listed for the blue side, whether this is in-state or out-of-state tuition. I did have a couple of questions for Grant when it comes to students evaluating the cost of either in-state or out-of-state tuition and more so the experience of that student. So when a person is coming into our post-bac program, would you say that they are allowed or even recommended to work during the post-bac program?
That's going to depend on your particular situation, I think is the answer. The ideal would be that you have a job that's not overwhelming and that it's in healthcare, so you're gaining additional experience in the world of healthcare during that time and that you're getting paid for it. In many cases, students will be doing volunteering in a healthcare setting during that time, and that may limit their ability to work. And of course, it also depends heavily, your ability to work will depend on whether you have other responsibilities in life. Are you taking care of children at home or parents at home? Are you taking a heavy load of academic courses as well? So I think the real answer to that question is that people who are concerned about that should have a chat with me, and we can talk about your particular situation and see what might be right for you. And certainly for those of you who need additional healthcare experience, volunteer work, shadowing physicians, part of what I'm here for is to help people find those opportunities in the area. And we're fortunate to be working in partnership with many local physicians and healthcare providing organizations to find those opportunities for you. One other thing on this slide, Mayan, really quickly, the cheapest medical school in the United States, which I think this is still true, NYU is free. They announced a few years ago that they were just eliminating tuition altogether. I think it's still the case. I assume they instantly became the most competitive medical school in the world, but I could be wrong there.
Oh, that's so interesting. I hope everyone took note of that, yeah. Just in case. And I have a follow-up question. So you gave some really good guidance in terms of whether or not post-bac students should work. Is working even an option for medical school students?
No. You're going to be busy then. I mean, when I was in medical school, there were some students who were doing the equivalent of work-study jobs. So they would help prepare the cadavers in the anatomy lab, I did a little bit of volunteer work in a research lab in the evenings and weekends, but being a medical student is pretty much a full-time job already. You're going to be very busy. The material that is presented to you in the classes in medical school is no more difficult and in many cases easier than what you covered as an undergraduate. But the volume increases hugely, right? So people often describe medical education as drinking from a fire hose. When I was in medical school, there would be days where I was sitting in a classroom hearing lecture after lecture for 8 hours straight. And then you have to go home and study. So you don't really have time to work on top of that.
Thank you. And one last question for you. So far we've talked about in-state versus out-of-state tuition, specifically looking at medical schools that are within the United States. If any of our webinar attendees here are in a situation where they're not accepted into any U.S. medical school, but they have an opportunity to attend an international medical school, what are some financial considerations that come with that?
So that's definitely a buyer beware situation. I'll be honest, I don't know what those programs cost, but I think the most important consideration is, are you going to be able to finish medical school in that program? And will you be able to come back to the United States and practice medicine? Many of these programs that you're talking about are in the Caribbean, and I know fine physicians that trained in those programs. A number of my former students trained in those programs and are working as I think they're all surgeons for some reason now, but they're all back in the United States and practicing. But one thing to keep in mind is many of those programs for your clinical years, your second and third year, they depend on the students coming back to the US and finding clinical clerkships, and they often don't get a lot of help in that. So you need to be aware of that. There's a lot of pressure in those programs to do well in the first few years, so students do flunk out of those programs. So it's kind of a sink or swim situation in those. And in terms of finding future residencies, if you want to go into a hyper-competitive field like dermatology or orthopedic surgery, my impression is it's going to be more difficult to get a residency position if you come out of one of those medical schools.
And so want to make sure that if there are any questions that you all might have, this is your opportunity to share them and to grab some answers. While you're thinking of your questions and answers, just want to give a reminder that we are here to help you get into medical school with our post-bac program, and you can find information of our program on our website. So I have our website listed here in the bottom left-hand corner. When you go to our webpage and you click on the top navigation where it says academics, you'll be presented with a drop-down menu. Pre-med, post-bac is listed there, and you click on it. There'll be lots of information about each course that we offer and some additional information about other courses that we have. For the pre-med specialization, this is a more structured route for students who need more holistic support towards medical school. If you're a student who's interested in applying to the pre-med specialization, there are 3 required courses for the specialization. First up is the Life in Medicine, which is the healthcare seminar series. This is when we're inviting different physicians to come in and touch on various topics that you will encounter as you're preparing to become a medical school student and a future physician. The second required course for the specialization is the Keys to Success in Medicine workshop. So we're going to dive into the different types of skills and skill sets that you need to be successful in your career in medicine. And lastly, we have the medical school application workshop, and we're going to do a very deep dive into all of the different parts of the application for medical school so that you can become a competitive candidate. The image that you see, the circle image that you see to the right, this is the digital badge that accompanies the completion of our pre-med specialization. This can be added to your LinkedIn so that any future employer can click on it and find the skills that you've acquired as an outcome of being in the pre-med specialization. We also have optional courses for for you to take advantage of. As I mentioned before, we're partnering with Kaplan to provide a discount on the MCAT prep course. And we also have extended one-on-one career counseling and advising. So in the Life in Medicine Healthcare Seminar Series, what you can imagine there is throughout the different topics that will be discussed, in a sense, you'll also be receiving large group career counseling. But if you need career counseling that's more individualized for your particular situation, you can sign up for our extended one-on-one career counseling and advising. We have also partnered with UCLA Extension to offer science courses. And so if you're interested in have that particular academic prerequisite need for chemistry, biology, physics, math, statistics, psychology courses, you can actually sign up through us to take UCLA Extension science courses. These are offered in a remote format. And it's very important that you understand the medical school program you're applying to and research and find out very specifically if they accept remote science courses. And if they do, please, we're inviting you to sign up for those UCLA Extension courses through us. And as always, we invite you to keep in touch. We are finalizing many things on our side. As soon as these things are finalized regarding application to the program, we will be sending you all an email. We'll also be sending you alerts when we come up with other future webinar topics and dates and times. We have the email address and phone number listed on the screen for you to reach out to us as well. All right, so it looks like we have a couple of questions. Here's a question. Ingrid, I might need your help answering some of these. The first question is, do you have to fill out an application for the post-bac program if you just want to take classes a la carte? Very great question. So the answer for that is, if you are interested in the pre-med specialization, we do require that the application is filled out. If you are interested in taking classes a la carte, meaning you take classes that are not packaged together in any structured way, you do not have to fill out the pre-med specialization application, but we will have a different form for you to fill out because there's some important information we need to collect to make sure to send you to the right channels for that class or for those classes. The other question here, do you have to be accepted into the post-bac program in order to take classes, the UCLA online classes? So if you're taking the UCLA online science classes or remote science classes in an a la carte fashion, then that doesn't require a program application, but there will be another form that we'll have on our website for you to fill out. Here's another question. Thank you for your questions, by the way. Grant, this might be for you. Where can we find the specific, I guess, information is the missing word there on whether certain medical schools take remote courses?
So I think the answer to that is the academic courses, which are what I assume you're talking about here, Andres, are offered by UCLA. And they have told us that they have not run into problems with medical schools not accepting their courses. But the better answer to this, if you're worried about a particular course or want more information on that, Andres, we can connect you with the people at UCLA who actually run those courses and have you talk directly with them and about their experience with students.
Thank you. And I wanted to call out, looks like this is a very informative piece of advice that Grant put out in the chat. Keep in mind that the Caribbean programs typically require that you find your clinical rotations on your own back in the US. They may help you look for them, but don't always guarantee that you will get to those programs. If you are thinking of applying to such a program, you should talk to current or recent students to get a clear view on the experiences and satisfaction with the program. So as you can kind of tell, there is a lot of due diligence that you as the student are required to do on your own behalf. There's another set of information that we're going to be providing for you, absolutely. But I just want to make it very clear that your journey to medical school, there's not a lot of, and I want to use this word very sensitively, there's not a lot of hand-holding. There is a lot of due diligence. When you're a post-bac student, you are considered to be a professional student. And so I just want to, make that very clear up front. We will provide you with as much information as we possibly can. And there's a wealth of information we are very much looking forward to sharing with you. But also keep in mind, there's also a wealth of information that you will be responsible for finding and unnerving on your own.
One thing to keep in mind is on this point is if you get to the point where you're actually going for an interview at a medical school, remember they're interviewing you, but you are also interviewing them, right? And part of your job is to figure out if that particular school is a good fit for you. And I'll tell you, when I interviewed for medical schools, there was one particular medical school, I won't say which one, where every student I met, every resident I met was miserable and unhappy. And the faculty member who interviewed me spent his entire time telling me how he manipulated people in his department. I got out of there as quickly as I could and flew home and accepted my offer at UCSF as a result of that. Right, it made it really clear to me that it would just be a miserable experience at that place. So, and remember that every medical school is different. They've got a different point of view and who they're hoping to train and what they imagine physicians coming out of their program are going to do someday. And there may be places that philosophically are a better fit for you. One thing for you to look at in the UC system is all the UC medical schools have what are called prime programs that specialize in treating particular patient populations. I think UCLA's prime program specializes in treating inner city poor, and I think UC Davis has a program that focuses on farm workers, and maybe it's San Diego that focuses on migrant populations and so on. So if you have a particular interest in a particular patient population, there may be a medical school that's better suited for you than others. When I went to medical school, I was clear I wanted to do medical research. And so the schools that were interested in me and that I was interested in were the large academic medical centers that really viewed their job as producing medical researchers, producing future academic physicians. Other medical schools that were really looking at producing doctors who were going to go out and practice in the community, they weren't interested in me at all, right? So how you present yourself will affect which schools are interested in you. And you should pay attention to how they present themselves and what they say their goals are. And part of our program, of course, is to help you find that information and vet that information.
And I want to underscore something that you shared, Grant. Grant just shared with you some really insightful guidance in terms of the information that you can receive from people who are currently in the situation you want to be in. He got some insight from people that said, if you're going to be here, you're going to be miserable. And he actually got a chance to observe that himself. I had something similar when I was interning two separate universities. And like Grant, I won't call them out by name, but graduate students that were in the group I was assigned to both said at these two different universities, do not come here for graduate school because you will be miserable. And they explained why. And I kept in touch with those graduate students. One had quit, another had transferred into another research group, which actually unfortunately restarted his time there. He'd already put in, I think, about 3 years towards a 4-year PhD, had to restart. So I just want to underscore that. As we're wrapping up, I see one more question. Don't want to miss that.
I'll take this one, Mayan. So this is somebody who is planning on applying to medical school in June of 2024. So first of all, applying in June, that's smart. Medical schools use rolling admissions. So if you apply as soon as possible, there are more slots open. If you wait till August or September to apply, many of the slots in the medical school class for the following year have already been filled, right? So applying early with the highest quality application that you can is a winning strategy for sure. So, and then this person goes on to say, if I'm planning on retaking more classes to increase my GPA, would I be able to resubmit the application with the updated grades? So I assume that here that the question you're asking is, if you take the classes this coming year, would you be able to submit your application with those grades? And the answer is yes. I think if you submit your application in June and you take courses over the summer and get grades back in late August, it's going to be too late to submit your application there. I can double check on that.
Thank you so much for your question, and thank you so much, Grant, for answering. As we're wrapping up, I know that we gave you a lot of information, probably maybe caused a little concern for you, but these are really good factors to think about at this point of your education. And so to make sure that we wrap up on a positive note, all of our attendees, let me know what type of inspiration you're feeling right now in the chat. Do you feel like you're a little bit more clear in terms of what we've presented to you in these 3 webinars? We are really excited to gather information internally and externally when it comes to other webinar topics. We have a few interesting topics in the queue. And we're really looking forward to presenting that to you. But in the chat, if you can let us know how you're feeling. Are you feeling energized? Are you feeling informed? And as people are getting their thoughts together for the panelists here, Dean PK and Dr. Grant Hartzog, if you can, for the attendees, if you could give them one final either piece of advice or affirmation statement towards their medical school journey, what would it be?
Oh, gosh. You know, there's no hiding the fact that the path to becoming a doctor is a long and difficult one, but it's an exciting and wonderful career. You're providing a true public service. You become a leader in your community. You get to work with a lot of smart, dedicated people. And you get to meet a wider group of people and hear a wider group or see a wider amount of the human experience than virtually anybody else on the face of this planet. It's really a privileged and exciting position, and I applaud you all for embarking on this journey.
Yeah, if I could just add, just to really echo what Grant said so eloquently, I do not believe there's any profession that has such a clear sense of purpose, and it defines you and it makes life worth living. You know, you're serving people. So yeah, I agree that just do it, as Nike would say.
Well said, Dean PK. Thank you so much, Megan, in the chat. Megan is sharing with us that I feel very informed, and I'm definitely interested in getting more information for the forms to complete classes a la carte through UCLA. We will absolutely get that information to you. Thank you as well, Celeste. Celeste shares with us, thank you so much for the great information. I feel much more informed. That is exactly what we're here for. That puts wind in our sails. And to button up our webinar, I'd like to leave you with a brief affirmation statement. We need you as a future physician. You can do this, and we are happy to help. Thank you so much for joining us all. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Take care.